which obviously means science fiction. But fundamentally for me, it means cat's cradle or string figures, that kind of tying together and passing on of patterns. String figures, science fact, science fiction, soin de ficelle, thank goodness for the French, speculative fabulation, speculative feminism, and maybe above all, so far. That kind of making patterns with each other that are at stake to each other, patterns that can fail, patterns that can be dropped, inherited patterns, invented patterns. Think we must, said Virginia Woolf in Three Guineas. She said it during World War I, when she was arguing against women supporting the war effort in World War I, a very difficult position to take in that time. Virginia Woolf's Think We Must resonates through the history of serious worlding, through the history of serious SF. And from Marilyn Strathern, I take these kinds of recursive, not a joke. It matters what stories tell stories. It matters what thoughts think thoughts. It matters what worlds world worlds. It matters what relations relate relations. That the job for those of us who would be serious is to somehow inhabit the troubled contact zones, inhabit the troubled patterning that is at stake and not finished, and undo and redo each other, compose and decompose in risk, so as to somehow strengthen the arts of living on a damaged planet. So as a descendant of sort of Greekish roots, as a Western white woman, in short, Medusa is one of my spirit figures, one of my patrons. And Medusa of 1,000 names. The Medusa, not the one that Athena got on her shield after a murder for hire. You know, she hires Perseid to cut off her head so she can put it on her shield. Athena's murder for hire basically told me who headborn of Zeus is forever after. The Medusa whose blood dripping from her neck, Eva Hayward teaches me this, whose blood dripping from her neck become the Gorgonia of the Western Mediterranean. Medusa whose body becomes Pegasus. And I tell you, feminists have a thing with horses. I had a feminist theory seminar in Karen Kaplan's time almost break up over the question of horses. It was an erotic question. Medusa of 1,000 names is a spirit figure for this talk. This mask is actually tanned geoduck skin. There are 2 universities in this country who have mascots among the mollusks. They're the University of California with the banana slug, a fight we had with our chancellor, which we won. The banana slug remained rather than the noble predator sea lion. And the other university in this country that has a mollusk for a mascot is Evergreen University in Olympia, Washington, where my godson just graduated a couple of years ago, and I gave a lecture. And the kids who I was lecturing to presented me with a gift to die for, which is a full mask. They went out to the shore, and they dug in the sand about yay so deep and pulled out this extraordinary mollusk called a geoduck, Geoduck. Okay, which is incredibly phallic. They pull out this geoduck, they skinned it, tanned it, and made a mask, which is my sense of really understanding tentacular thinking and kind of living, living in tentacularity and living with the critters of the sea and the land and the airs for possible times, for ongoing times. Cthulhu is from Chthonic. It's not from Lovecraft's Cthulhu. It's rather from the word chthonic, in and of the earth. The temporalities in and of the earth that are not simply ancient but are ongoing and are at stake. They are as at stake in the past as they are in the times to come, as they are now. The Thulucene is the kind of temporality that I suggest we inhabit, as well as the Capitalocene, or the Anthropocene, or the Plantationocene, or other ways of naming temporalities of urgency, temporalities of great consequence right now. So that the Thulucene is a time I propose not to replace all of the others, but using Marisol de la Cadena's phrase this morning, not only. We are not only living in the Anthropocene or the Plantationocene or the Capitalocene or whatever. Not only. We are also at stake to each other in the tentacular times of the Thulucene, masked by tanned geoduck skin. Okay? Satoru Abe actually carved in paper and painted this amazing positive and negative image of parting trees, which is the image I propose for us for the rest of my talk for thinking about contact zones. I don't have anything to say about these extraordinary arboreal images, except that they grip me in their power and in their force away from each other, their force of parting, but it's also a force of being the same tree but not the same tree, a force of light and dark, night and day, a force of moon and sun. A way of thinking about story and contact zones that grips my heart. By the way, a biologist friend of mine who will show up later in the lecture gave me this image. It's one of his favorite images, which he bought from Satoru Abe a few years ago, who lives in Honolulu. In my own ill-begotten and ill-lived past, I did contact zones with cyborg worldings. You'll be familiar possibly with these paintings by Lynn Randolph. My alliances with artists have gone back a long way. Lynn Randolph has been a painter. She's Texan. She's deeply informed by the retablo practices in Mexicana and Texicana practice. Both of these are obviously informed by the retablo tradition, and both of them are cyborg figures that have appeared in my previous work that foreground the importance of narrative. The cyborg there on your left was done at the time of Tiananmen Square, and the woman in question there, her parents were in Tiananmen Square when the state moved against the demonstrators. The digitality of that particular painting is impossible to miss. The animal spirit, technology, historicity, the real person, the cosmological, astronomical figures in the background. It's that kind of implosion of worlds, which the cyborg world has always been for me. The other one obviously works off of the barely secularized Christian narrative of technoscience, a salvation narrative, a cancer cure narrative, a narrative of sacrifice and suffering, a narrative of surrogates. The other is usually sacrificed for the one, so that the term sacrifice, of course, is what is used for the killing of laboratory animals. And this particular mouse, human, female figure, her breasts very prominent, is the first patented animal in U.S. patent law. Plants led the way and were patented actually decades before, which is very important to remember. But animals had a kind of honorary status up until the 1980s when Oncomouse is patented. So I go to my next artist, who is Patricia Piccinini, also an Australian artist, a sculptor. This is a sculpture, though it's also a gas-filled airbag that actually flies. And it's on its, I hesitate to say maiden flight, given the degree to which those nipples are obviously so full of lighter-than-air gas. She's on her maiden flight over Canberra, commemorating, of all things, Australian National Day, 100 years on. The ironies abound. Okay. She is a whale. She is flying over damaged land, and Patricia Piccinini proposes her as many things, including a figure of wonder, a figure of evolution that might have been, a figure of what if. She intended it to be, and it is, an actual flying, an actual flying airship that has about 100 hours of flight time left before it's decommissioned. So Yale would have the money to get it to fly in New Haven, which I strongly recommend. When Patricia and I met, we immediately began fabulating an ecology for the sky whale. This is the name of her. She's a sky whale. Because I thought that she was clearly pregnant, but that she was going to have to come into the wetlands to give birth. But if she comes into the wetlands, the question of becoming airborne again is going to be very difficult. So her milk must produce tremendous quantities of gas in the calf, as well as in herself. So we fabulated the kind of the biochemistry of the milk, and we got the kid drinking a lot of milk and becoming more and more buoyant as the gas in the kid built up, and then mama and baby flew again and rejoined a pod. Can you imagine a whole pod of these things? Now, there were those who wanted this particular piece of work banned for its pornographic tendencies. I think they had no sense of humor, and frankly, no sense of wonder, no sense of the speculative fabulation that serious evolutionary thinkers build into their way of waking up in the morning. So I go to another contact zone. We've left the cyborg realm. Sky whale and Medusa of 1,000 names are figures protecting the rest of this talk, I hope. And I go to the circumpolar north and to the controversies over hunting, in particular to the controversies over the ringed seal, Natsik, for the Inuit people of the area, and to the question of the tremendously vexed question and importance of hunting and of foods from the land, from the sea, for the peoples of the circumpolar north, in a context in which they are living out the histories of multiple colonialisms, the histories of commercialization of their animals, including the seal hunt, and the histories of animal rights oppositions of many kinds. As you probably know, the dogs of the Inuit peoples of Nunavut were slaughtered by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police not all that long ago in an effort to force sedentarization. The killing of the animals that are important to indigenous peoples so as to force sedentarization is a very old strategy, and we'll meet it again in this talk. This particular ring seal, this particular Natsik, was drawn by Paulette Metuk with Kevin O'Connor and Duskin Drum after a summer bush school study in Pangnatan in Nunavut. And it's an image that I'm trying to develop the courage to wear to an animal advocacy conference in Mexico City in January. I'll certainly show the slide. Whether I wear the T-shirt or not, I'm not sure. But you can see that sea ice tea is being poured out into the liver. The lungs are the wake of the boat. The child is peering out of the tent. You've got the instruments of both preparing the skin and of hunting the animal. And you've got where Kisi become seal. And I propose this image as a way of foregrounding a very interesting contact zone that exists right now that is at stake, that I would propose need not end badly, but might end badly. And it is in particular, it's the way of thinking about climate change. The Inuit peoples who hunt Natsik understand very well that the molecules that this seal has eaten are molecules that circulate through their bodies, and that they are in the midst of global organic chemical pollution that circulates through the bodies, particularly of northern peoples, really everyone on the planet. But northern peoples are not only the subject of some of the most rapid ice melting on the planet, but also subject to some of the most heavy pollution burdens because of the concentration up the food chain of the animals they depend on for food. Now, there was another, excuse me, my mind blanked, which I usually forbid it from doing. The Inuit people are perfectly aware of the change of the airs, of the ices, of the waters. Indeed, they have an elaborate and developed discourse. They've made films, they have a TV, they have a whole TV station, which you can find several programs in relationship to the change of the ice, the change of refractive indices in the atmosphere, all sorts of things, which are collected more under a term called sila, the breath of the earth and the waters and the airs, the circulating breath of the world under the Inuktitut term sila, which is different from climate change but not against climate change. Climate change is an imported concept that comes with Southern scientists, that comes with a whole other array of Southern experts who have, at best, a culturalist, multiculturalist interest in Inuktitut language or in Inuit thinking or in Inuk people, and would not consider that there are probably whole practices of observation and relationship to the changes in the ice, in the waters, in the airs, collected under the relationships of Sila that climate change apparatuses and their modeling apparatuses are relatively blind to. And that a robust taking care of country in the circumpolar north might be much better off with a kind of serious undertaking to not translate Inuktitut words into English or other Western languages or vice versa, but actually to redo and undo each other so that nobody comes out of the contact zone the same as the way they entered it.